Welcome, everybody, to today's office hours. Our topic of the day is transaction to close and some of the fun things that you need to do to handle all of your processes that from the time you get that transaction process all the way to close. And today we're actually going to have Kendra. She is fabulous at creating workflows and dealing with stuff, and kind of go through some of the process of what it takes to build a good transaction to close workflow and some of the things that she's incorporated into her own workflows and the workflows of some of our users. So for those that don't know me, I think everybody does at this point, but for those that maybe are watching this on the recording, my name is Mark Stepp. I am the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve, creator of the workflow platform itself, the relationship scoring, a few other things. Been in business in the real estate technology business for over 31 years of helping agents throughout the years just understand automation and creating a sustainable business, and really helping you guys understand the why. Today I have, like I said, with me Kendra. And Kendra, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yep. If we haven't had a chance to have a conversation yet, my name is Kendra Rouse. I work in our premium services department. Our entire department is working one-on-one with you to, help you or provide you with a suite of workflows, get those set up, customized, and so that you're really running your business as efficiently as possible. I've been a licensed agent. I've managed a brokerage. I've done new construction. I mean, there isn't a lot I haven't done, but I really found my passion and my strength in helping other agents like you and making sure that your businesses and processes are, really working as optimally as they can be.
She's also worked on Chinook helicopters too.
I can. If anybody has a helicopter out there, I can, help you with that also. So Mark touched on this a little bit. Today, we're going to be talking about contract to close workflows, really a core staple that should be in your business. Kind of give you some more information on the premium services or different things that we offer that you may not be aware of, tell you how you can get additional help and support. And then we'll also have a free giveaway, which is a workflow today. So definitely something I think that is important and you can implement in your business starting today. As we go through, we are, here to essentially go over the topic that we're discussing. But as we go through, if you have questions pertaining to what I'm talking about or, any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A at the end. And we want to make sure that we're using these office hours to really get those questions answered or those how-tos or things that, you may have been wondering for the last week. So go ahead and put those in chat and we'll make sure that they get answered. So when it comes to transaction to close workflows, the basics are you need one. And I know when I talk to a lot of agents, we do, what I call a discovery call. Let's talk about your business. Let's talk about the things that you need. And if you've done any business at all, then the only people that I would say transaction to close should not be one of your main priorities initially is people that don't know what they need to do for transaction to close. But if you've closed any kind of business at all, you have a fundamental understanding of the things that you have to do. You know how to write a contract, you know how to submit it, you know how to do earnest money, you know how to do all these things. There's certain things that have to happen for you to close a transaction. And they may be things that are just living in your brain and seem natural or, things that you don't think need systems and automation behind it. But really the power is, I always think if I'm doing 3 transactions now, what does that look like if I'm doing 30 or 60 or something? And your ability to do more than you're doing right now is to stop and take the time to organize what's already in your head in a way that makes it easier for you and that systematizes it and hopefully automates it so that you are doing more in less time. So you probably, even if you don't know it, you have a transaction to close process. That workflow, even if it lives in your brain, it's still a workflow. It's the step-by-step things that you need to do. Realvolve superpower is helping you get those things out of your head onto paper and to help you or to allow somebody else to come into your business so that you can have more time for those dollar productive activities that you should be focused on, not the paperwork, not those things that you've done monotonously 1,600 times that we can automate and get rid of. So today, I really want to walk through the foundations of workflows, but I really took a higher level approach. And we're going to go over kind of 3 things that I guarantee you're all doing in your business and taking a real deep dive look into what those look like supercharged. In our premium services department, when we provide you with a suite of workflows. Our transaction to close processes have over 50 steps. I've seen agents with 20 steps. I've seen agents with 100 steps. Each of your own processes are going to be different. But today we're going to talk about a few of those things that you probably all can relate to. So when you take a step back initially, one of the first things you do, and one of the things we're going to be talking about in a couple weeks, is workflow planning. And when you think about workflow planning, it's probably something that I know for me as an agent, when I was managing a brokerage and I built out Realvolve, it was hard for me. I had a hard time. It's like, okay, well, then I have pre-listing and then it goes to active listing and then it goes to contract to close. And that structure just blew my mind for the longest. And I had a really hard time with the higher level overview. So when you're thinking about that with contract to close, you really have the basics, okay? Most of you are probably closing buyers. Most of you are probably closing sellers. So I don't see a lot of agents that just have contract to close workflow. They typically break it down into buyer contract to close and seller contract to close. And the reason for that is because the things that you would do vary slightly different when you represent a buyer versus a seller. So you really want to think about those things that differ enough to where they need their own set of workflows. So when, again, at the basics, buyer and seller, some of the other things that I see agents need that we've built out for them is a dual agency. So in some areas, you could represent the buyer and the seller. It wouldn't be appropriate. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is an opening email. Okay. So if I just ran my buyer contract to close workflow on top of my seller contract to workflow because I represented the same person, then I now have an opening email to my buyer and an opening email to my seller, and I have just double emailed my client, and they're probably going, what is going on? So the dual agency contract to close really takes a look at how do I treat a buyer and a seller when they're essentially the same person, or when I represent both of them. Sorry, they're not the same person, when I represent both of them. I've also found benefit in building out new construction workflows. And coming from this background, I understand, I did enough new construction under contract to know that our processes differed. They weren't the same as a resale buyer or seller. So we changed those out a little bit. Also, if you do a lot of listing, new construction contract to close, and a canceled transaction workflow, which is what we're going to be giving you today. And canceled transaction workflow really takes a look at, well, what happens when those workflows fall through? What do I do next? So step 2 is really planning your workflow. So again, deciding what you're going to do and then get started. So inside of Realvolve, we have a library of workflows that some of them are free to the public. Some of them are available for purchase. You can work one-on-one with our team that will help you build those out. We, in our Navigator program, provide you with 18 different workflows, over 200 templates to get that customized for you. And then Realvolve allows you to go in and just build your own workflows. So again, this webinar is really focused on a little bit more of an advanced view. So if you are really needing those basics, we have a lot of videos and training out there that would say, hey, where do I start? How do I launch a workflow? How do I do all those things that we're not really going to be going over today? So if you need other specific training that you're not seeing here, feel free to email me and kind of give me an idea of where you're at or what you need. Okay, so planning. You typically don't want to just go in Realvolve and start creating tasks, because essentially what will happen is you're like, well, what did I miss this, or what is this? And so really what you want to think about, or what your basics are what are the things that I have to do for every single transaction, and just make a list of those, right? I have to track the people and the important dates. I have to get my broker a copy of that paperwork. I've got to open escrow and get the contract out to everyone. I have to make sure that we got a deposit, schedule the inspections. These things aren't new to you guys. These are the things that you've been doing, whether it's through a workflow or just on your own. Where the power comes in is taking what you have to do and merging it with what you'd love to be doing. So, the basics of things that I have to do as an agent, and those things that make me look like a rock star agent, are planning and putting into place systems and things like that. And one of those first things that you have to do, in addition to saying, what are the things I have to do, or what are the things that I would love to be doing? And so here I've put, a few things into, but one of the things we're going to be talking about today is making sure that all of your important dates are put into the system. Well, there's, no one way to do things, but in my mind, if I can have a list in front of me that goes in sequential order of the way that I'm looking at my executed contract, I've saved minutes off of my time, and those minutes add up. And so I'm looking at every single little thing that I do, and I'm looking at ways that I can systematize it and automate it so that my life day to day is a lot easier. Another thing we're going to be talking about in a couple weeks is webhooks. We've touched a little bit on this in the past, but there's a lot of power there. And essentially what a webhook is it gives you the ability to throw information outside of Realvolve. So I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of things that webhooks could do and really planning what I'd like to be doing. So I want to create a transaction outline of my important dates. Okay. I like visuals. I want my client to be able to see, here's all of your important dates. So what I could do is I could take the information that I put into Realvolve once and send it over to this document, have these merge fields fill in themselves, generate a document customized to my client, and do that within a couple clicks. And as you'll see today, we really are going to focus on taking one set of information and reusing it to maximize or to save time. Another idea, and again, we'll go over really webhooks and get into the nitty gritty in a couple weeks. But another thing that I've seen this done is a transaction pipeline. Maybe I want this kind of view of things that I have under contract. I can send that information outside of Realvolve and have it populate in this form. Sending an open email that autofills my timeline, my people, and it puts my contract into that email. We're going to be going over that today to see kind of what that looks like and how to make that the best use of the information that's already in the system.
The best part of that is you can make it totally automated and not worry about exporting or doing a lot of things that we have available to you, but you don't have to using the webhooks. It's very automatic.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be going over that in, I think, 2 weeks. So the first thing that we want to do, and this is going to be important in any contract to close process. Typically, we have a task inside of Realvolve to set up your important dates and set up your people. Basically, put that information in the system. It kind of goes hand in hand with auditing your contract. Okay. Anytime you go under a contract, I'm sure you, your assistant, your broker, somebody's auditing that contract to ensure that it's accurate, it's not missing anything. This step really goes hand in hand with that. So let's take a look at a video and kind of see how we've set up in the premium services department our important dates.
A critical step in any transaction to close process is inputting important people and important dates into the system. Here I have two tasks. I have a task that is asking me who are the parties and the people involved in this specific transaction and what are the dates. These are typically one of the first tasks that you're going to do on any contract to close process. There's a couple ways you can do this inside of Realvolve. I have elected to create tasks, and here it indicates with this checklist that I have a checklist with additional information that's requested. So if I click on this square, it's going to show me in order what information is being requested for this specific type of transaction. I prefer this type of information input over coming to the transaction tab and entering the important dates here. And the reason for that is because we can put a lot of thought processes into building our workflows so that they ask us specific information. Whereas under the transaction tab, these important dates may be, not things that are specific to a buyer contract to close versus seller versus new construction versus whatever I'm trying to do in this specific application. Whereas here, I know that these are the things, these are the dates, these are the important items that I know I need every time I put a buyer under contract. So as you can see here, if the system already has the information, it will display it for me here, and it will allow me to select dates for things I don't have. Click them once to mark off that I've done them. And I can hit save and close. Once all of these items are checked off, then this task will be complete and it will file itself away as complete. So how did I set this up? Inside of your workflow, in this case, I'm working on buyer contract to close. I'm going to create an activity. In this scenario, we have broken this down into 2 different tasks. And the reason for that is because sometimes this is a lot of information. You may title your activity input, people, and dates, and that's completely fine. So the things that you're going to select is when are you going to do this? Who's responsible for doing it? And titling your activity. So if I click on this pencil to open up and look at exactly what's going on here, I have selected to use merge fields to input that information. Now, I could come in here and type in acceptance date and hit enter. And you see how when it's not surrounded by brackets, this is just static information. And I don't have the ability to input any information into the system. So what that looks like on the front end is here. It just says fill out the commission tab. Well, if I just put acceptance date as a static form, I would have to say, okay, let's get out of this checklist. And now I have to come over here, find acceptance date, fill it in, come back to my radar, select my activity. But I don't want to do that. I want to make this as efficient as possible. So I've selected to use merge fields. And so how I did that is inside my checklist, I access my merge fields by hitting this double bracket, and it will give you a list. In this case, I want acceptance date. And so I can scroll through all of these, but there's hundreds of them. So typically what I'm going to do is start to type in a few letters so that it will start to narrow down. In this case, as I do this, it starts to narrow down and I can see exactly what item I want. Maybe in this case, I want to add acceptance time. I'm going to add it and hit enter, and it will add it to the bottom. One of the great things and things that we suggest to do inside of these checklists is to make the information that you're inputting in order. And typically in this situation would be in the order that you see it in your contract. And so in my contract, I see acceptance date, then I see acceptance time. But by default, I put acceptance time here at the bottom. So if I click, hold, and drag, I can put acceptance time wherever I want. So I'm going to take the time, look at my contract, pull out all of the dates that I'm going to need for any given buyer contract to close process, and I'm going to create a checklist with each of those merge fields. Sometimes if you need to kind of look and see exactly what merge fields Realvolve offers, you can go to your settings, click on settings, scroll down to the bottom left to set default fields. You'll select transaction. And as you scroll down, you start to see the various party members as well as dates that Realvolve has to offer. And you can kind of get your ideas to start generating your own checklist.
Okay, so
A critical step in
anyone have questions on setting up your important dates? And really the power behind why we're doing that is because, one, you probably want to store that information in sort of a database, but also really the power of other things that we can do come off of inputting that information once, and let's reuse it over and over in other places. And one of the critical things in contract to close is that initial, what are the people, what are the dates? Because if you set that up and you input it, then we can do a variety of things reusing that information over and over. And then we can also use trigger points. So 2 days before closing, we want to do this. 5 days after acceptance, we want to do that. And all of that hinges on that initial activity setup, or give me the information and give me the people.
The beauty of having those checklists like that as well is that even though you set up your processes, you set up your systems, if you get a new assistant, a new listing coordinator, transaction coordinator, they don't know your systems. They can follow the workflow prompts without having to learn the entire system. Where does this field go? Where do I enter this data? You just have to put them on the activity that needs to get done. And then whenever that happens, they just fill in the checklist. And that's, I mean, just cuts down so much time and learning that it just makes it so much easier.
Gotcha. Yeah, Bobby's saying that that they're not using Google anymore, and Bobby's actually one of my clients. So, Bobby, we'll talk about implementing that timeline into your processes and see kind of what would work for you, and make sure that we have something similar in place for you. Okay, so what do we do with that information, right? Putting that information into a checklist in and of itself may seem like, well, isn't that adding extra time? Well, you know, like Mark was saying, some of this is maybe the transaction coordinator that you have doesn't know what dates and things that they need to enter in the system. That checklist solves that problem, one. And then two, we're ensuring that no steps are missed. And so typically when you go under contract, one of the things that you're going to be doing as soon as you get an accepted offer is getting your client or the people that you're working with professionally an opening email, or providing them with a copy of their contract, or giving them next steps saying, hey, congratulations, you're under contract. We break that down into an opening email to closing parties, meaning anybody you work with professionally, closing attorneys, title, escrow, lender, whoever it is. Okay. We're going to send them one email that says, hey, here are the people, here are the dates, here's a copy of the contract, here's, you know, this, let's get this escrow open. Then we're also going to send an email to our client. And that one's basically kind of giving them a breakdown, giving them a copy of their contract, and putting a lot of information, because their contract could be who knows how many pages long, into kind of a summary of things that they need to focus on next in a very kind of overwhelming and busy time. So in this checklist here, one of the things that empowers your workflows or your processes, or really makes you a rock star, is kind of just outlining the things that you really want to be doing. I guarantee if you opened up and looked at a copy of your an executed contract and you tried to write the email that we're going to write now, it would probably take 10 or 15 minutes. Okay. So at a basics, I want to send that email out, give them all the things. I want to auto input the important information that I already put in my checklist. I want to use this email as a way to introduce my transaction coordinator. I want it to pull in the dates the client needs to know right now. I want to list all the party members, their email addresses, and their phone numbers. That's going to be important to that type of specific client. And again, part of the reason we break that down into buyer and seller is because on the buy side, we would want to say, hey, here's your lender, here's their information, even though they probably have it. Whereas on the sell side, it probably wouldn't be appropriate to do that. So one of the reasons we break down these workflows into subsets is because we take all of those things into consideration so that they're appropriate, and you don't really have to think about it. I know once I put in this information into my checklist, my buyer auto email is going to pull up the things, auto generate the things that are important for this buyer. Also going to tell the client what to expect next, and I'm going to send them a copy of their executed contract. Not only am I going to do that, I'm going to have the system automate that and pull in that contract into that email for me automatically without me having to manually attach it.
Just think about how much time that process right there, those 6 elements, would actually take you if you didn't have an automated process like Realvolve. I mean, that's the power of it.
Yeah, and it changes it from I would love to be doing this to I am doing this every time, because I have changed what I would love to be doing to make that the easier option. If it is easier for me to generate this email right here, so I put myself in, right? I'm the transaction coordinator. We got Wilma Flintstone as the lender. The system already knew that information because I put it in. It already knew when the inspection contingency end, when the appraisal contingency end. So I clicked 2 buttons. The system went in and looked for all of that information and wrote this email for me in seconds. I can't do that without the power of merge fields.
And also think about the times, and I've heard agents tell me this time and time again, my assistant went on vacation, or my assistant went on maternity leave, and now I'm up a creek. And with a system like this, somebody can step in very easily and just do the process without having to worry about how to do it. It's a process that's automatically done, or you check it off and let it do it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take a look at another video and kind of see how we've taken that important dates and people checklist and used it to power our opening email.
I went under contract today, and I want to make sure that I get my opening email to my buyer. In this case, I've ran buyer's contract to close. And I have a task here telling me to email, opening email to the buyer. And so I'm going to select the square. I'm going to select from my available actions, in this case, to send that email out to the buyer, and I'm going to click run. I've set this task up so that it's manual with preview, meaning that I can take a look at the email prior to it sending out. So I can hit skip, which is essentially cancel. If I hit send message, I'm going to blind send it. And typically I'm going to click edit message, since I've set this up that I want to preview it before I send this email out. So when I hit edit message, it's going to open up my template that I have associated with this specific task. So I can view it in this view. I may prefer to come up here and click on this arrow to open up another tab so that I view it in a larger format. And as I can see, I have access to the template, my opening email. It has auto-populated who it's going to be sending it to. In this case, it's the buyer. And I have my template here with a large use of merge fields so that this information can pull in information that I already have stored in this transaction. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Also, you'll notice down here that the system has said, hey, anytime you send this email, go ahead and look for any files that are tagged contract. And in this case, it went in and found a document that's titled example.doc.pdf. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do. If I click on show preview and scroll down, I can see here that these merge fields that I've told the system to go in and look for that information that's stored has now auto-populated. So it's telling who the transaction coordinator is. It's auto-pulled in the lender, where the lender works, the title company. It has given this buyer all of the dates that are important to them. And as you can see, I did that in just a couple clicks without any effort. So how did I do that? The first thing I did is inside of my buyer contract to close workflow, I created a task called opening email to buyer. I've assigned it to my buyer transaction coordinator. This may be personal preference. Most of the time I see people having their transaction coordinator send this out, or at least having the buyer's agent send it out and introduce the transaction coordinator. And it may be a situation where you are your own transaction coordinator, in which case we would just adjust the template so that the verbiage is correct. So I'm going to select what role is assigned to this. In this case, I've said that it's the buyer's transaction coordinator responsibility to send out this email. Under my with field, I have selected party members, meaning that every time I send this, I don't know right now who the buyer is, but I know that this email always goes to the buyer. I've scheduled this 0 days after acceptance, and I've created an action to send an opening email to the buyer. In my action, I've selected manual with preview. I want to send an email, and I have attached the template that I want to send with it. If I click on the preview icon, it's going to open up another tab and allow me to preview this template. And as you can see, I have generated or created templates. It's very heavy in the use of merge fields so that I can reuse the information that I had already put in when I input my important dates and my people. So I've said this is who the buyer transaction coordinator is. First name, last name, work phone, work email, lender, title. And as we saw, the system went in and found this information for this particular transaction and auto-filled out or auto-generated this template for me. Also, I've said, go in and look inside of this specific transaction and see if there's anything in there tagged contract. And how I did that is I clicked up here on this attach icon as you would upload a normal attachment. But instead of uploading a file, I've selected choose tags. I've clicked in here and I've selected the tag that I want this template to look for. And so what that looks like inside of my transaction, every transaction has a file tab. This file tab stores your documents, and I can tag individual documents. In this case, I've tagged this as example document contract, And so anytime I go to send this template, because I have told it to look for contract, it will pull that information in for me. I've also, through the use of these merge fields, told it to go in and look and see if this information is stored in the system to auto pull that information in. Under CC, I have said that buyer to and the buyer agent should also be CC'd on this email. So again, my with is the buyer, but I'm CCing these other parties. Had I put buyer to and buyer agent inside this field, each party member would receive their own separate email, which may be okay in some instances, but in this one, I want everybody to be included on one email. I've also selected to update the last email date, which goes in and says, go ahead and tell inside the buyer's contact that update their last email date. As you can see here, the default priority is medium, but I've selected 3 on this. And the importance of this is oftentimes, as you can see here, we talked in depth about the importance of getting this information into the system. So prior to me sending this opening email to the buyer, I need to input the dates and I need to input the people. All of these things are happening on 0 days after acceptance. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to have a prompt to send my opening email to the buyer before I put in my dates and my people. And so what I've done is I've selected number 3 here, meaning that if I have multiple things that are happening at the same time, in this case we do, this says push this activity down to number 3 if you see multiple things that are happening at the same time. Once I've created my activity, I'm going to hit update. And then as you can see on the front radar, when these tasks populate, it's going to select, or it's going to prompt me to send input the people and the dates. And because I've already checked this off, this activity went to go live under completed, but then I have access to send out my opening email to this buyer. I went under contract.
Ton of information there, but I love it. And, I hope that you guys have similar processes in place already. And if you don't, then, that's what I'm here for. Please reach out to me and we can talk about it. But just in those 2 things, so much power alone. And like I said, your contract to close process may end up being dozens of steps. Everybody's unique and each area is unique. And so what may differ from you, but I guarantee you those kind of core things are going to be there. So the other thing that I really wanted to go over today is taking into account the power of Realvolve. I know that Realvolve is robust, but it's one of the things I love about it, right? Like if you really take, in real estate as a business, if you're a realtor, you are a business. And so if you take your business seriously and you understand the power behind processes and systems and things like that, you typically what I see, and which is unfortunate, is that agents get so busy. Once you're successful, you're juggling so many balls, and these people are sometimes have superpowers, right? For you to be a successful agent, first of all, you have to figure out how to reinvent the wheel. Like you don't half the time know what you're doing until you get so good that you do know what you're doing. But at that point, unfortunately, I see so many people that are too busy to stop and put the foundation in place. And so if you are a brand new agent, you've never done a deal, you're not going to be able to have the time to sit down and say, oh, I would love to do this, and my opening email would look like that, and things like that. But if you've done, even a few deals, you have the basic foundation to start putting these things in place so that when you scale, you are decades above your competition, because they didn't, a lot of them didn't have the ability to do that. And if you're a seasoned agent, my entire department is dedicated to making sure that you still have your wheels rolling, and we slide these processes into place as you're still running to make sure that you don't slow down, to make sure that you don't have, hiccup in your system where we're just allowing you to do things more efficiently over time so that you can really take what you're doing now and give it superpowers.
Hey, Kendra.
Yeah.
You used a word there, and I want to make sure, and I'm only bringing this up. Everybody may have already known this, and that's fine. But I cannot tell you how many agents have asked me about the word scale. What do you mean scale? And whenever you are doing 1 or 2 or 3 transactions a month, you can get through some of this stuff. You potentially could do all this stuff without automation, without it. Now, you're going to be busy. You're going to be doing a lot of grunt work, and you're going to be doing a lot of things that may be outside your wheelhouse. But think about, as you grow, as you become more fluent in the process of getting more leads, getting more listings, selling more property. Now you go from 3 a month to 12 a month. Can you do the same process, this process, without automation? And it becomes very difficult. And the scale part of it, to scale your business, means I can do the same thing for 1 to 3 versus 20 a month, whatever. And it doesn't degrade your ability to perform and to give the same results.
Right. And I think that brings up another point yesterday. And I think that, and again, it goes back to the agents, being successful and doing it in a way where it required a lot of grunt work. And I had an agent I was working with yesterday tell me, I was like, well, what about this? And she's like, honestly, she's like, I've been tired for the last 6 months. I've just been tired. And part of that goes back to, if I know myself and my personality, I don't like doing the same things over and over and over and over, right? So if I've been doing those things for so long and I've had to just keep reinventing the wheel, I get tired of doing it. And I think that what comes out of this, or what the takeaway should be, is that you can be doing, and I'm just throwing out numbers, 3 transactions in a very manual way. The same way you could be doing 10 or 15 transactions in an automated, scalable way, with doing the same amount of work. If you set up your systems and your processes right, we really focus on taking away those things that you have to be doing or that you should be doing, and giving you more time to develop relationships so that you're not burnt out and that you don't, kind of get in the grind so much that you don't have time to do this. So the last kind of process that we're going to go over is your closing. And I chose that because probably a lot of you, everybody's closing. I see some agents that just create a task and it says schedule closing. So a lot of this in your thought process comes back to, am I going to be doing this? Because if you're the one scheduling closing, which if you're an agent and you have a transaction coordinator, probably scheduling your closing might not be the best use of your time. You're going to have to define that in each thing that you do right now and really take a look at, can I give this to someone else? And part of somebody's comfortability with giving that task to someone else is having it set up in a way where they feel comfortable with stepping away from that task. And part of that goes into the thought process of how I set this up. If I just create a simple to-do that says schedule closing, and the transaction coordinator clicks on it one time and it's off, I'm not necessarily guaranteeing that all the things that I want to be done are being done. I didn't verify that the date and the time are in the system. I could have an email ready to send over to the title company or the closing department requesting that we get that scheduled, which we're going to go over all this. What I'm not a fan of is sending emails out into la la land. And so let's say we set up an email and it says, hey, title, I want to schedule closing. And then that task just goes away. Well, who's to say that title ever got back with me? Okay. Then again, I haven't necessarily set up my transaction coordinator to fail, but I haven't put any processes into place to verify that we got that information back and that what needed to happen happened. I want to make sure, again, that the time and the date of the closing are in the system. I want to email the other agent and my client confirmation of the time and date after the closing is scheduled. I want to text the client a reminder one day before closing and include the address of the location that we're closing. And I want to add the closing date as a time and date on my calendar as an appointment. So what's that look like? We're going to watch another quick video and kind of take through or walk through that.
In this scenario, I have an estimated closing date of April 7th. So I've created a task that's going to populate 7 days before my anticipated closing date, reminding me to confirm that the final walkthrough and the closing have been scheduled, and then also send everybody a confirmation out. So what this looks like, if I select this square, it gives me a checklist of the items that I need or the information that I need to input prior to completing this task. So in this scenario, the other agent has gotten back with me. I know that this final walkthrough is confirmed for April 6th at 11:30. I have my closing date as April 7th, but because I have no closing time in here, that indicates to me that I have not finalized or confirmed this appointment. And so what I have down here is what we call an incomplete checklist. In other words, these are actions that help me be able to complete or finish out my checklist. So in this case, if I couldn't confirm or close out my closing date and time, it's because I probably need to send a request over to title or a closing attorney to schedule closing. And so in this case, this is exactly what this is. I have an email that's going to go over to title or my closing attorney or whoever it is that I am going to be scheduling closing with, and ask them, hey, can we go ahead and get this closing scheduled? So it says exactly that. We would like to schedule our closing for 123 Main Street. What times are currently available on? And it will pull in the estimated closing date. I can click preview. And as you can see here, it pulled in 123 Super Awesome Street. What times are currently available on April 7th? So if I'm happy with my message, I'm going to go ahead and send message. Now, I have set this up so that if I send this incomplete checklist item, this task will go away and it will come back in 2 days. Now, it may be your situation or your scenario where you don't have this task go away. In my situation, I want to go ahead and allow the closing attorney or the title company a couple days to receive that message and get that scheduled before this task comes back and reminds me again to verify that we have this scheduled. So I've sent that out. In this case down here, it says 2 runs, which indicates to me that I've sent this email now to title company 2 times to request to get that scheduled. So as of today, they got back with me and we're going to close at 11 a.m. So I now have everything I need to go ahead and check this off. And as you see, once I complete my checklist, it says, hey, now you have a new set of actions available for your completed checklist. In this case, I can send a confirmation of the closing and the final walkthrough to the seller's agent, or I can send a confirmation of the final walkthrough and the closing to the buyers. Now, the reason these are separate and I could have them together is because I don't want to provide the other agent with my client's information. So the way that we've sent this up, we're essentially sending out 2 separate emails, one to the other agent and one to our client. When I have multiple action items available, I can select one, I can select the other, or I can select both. In this case, I would want to confirm those, the closing and the final walkthrough with both parties. And so I'm going to select both, and I'm going to hit run. Now it's telling me, it's giving me the first option to send this email to, in this case, the other agent. So I can hit edit message to preview it. It pulls it up, just confirming the final walkthrough is at this date, at this time. When I hit preview, it pulls in all the information from my checklist, auto-populates that email, and I can hit send message to send it out. Now the next one comes up, and in this case, it's just a demo, so it's showing it the same person, but the second email would actually be to my client. So in this case, I'm going to hit edit message, and this message in this case is the same thing, but it may be different. You may talk differently to your client than you would, and you're going to hit send message. So how did I set that? Inside my buyer contract to close workflow, I've created a task that says confirm final walkthrough and closing and send confirmation. I've assigned it to the buyer transaction coordinator. It may be the buyer agent's responsibility in your process to confirm the final walkthrough and closing, but in this situation, we're going to have the transaction coordinator do it. In the with field, I've said include the buyer agent in communication that I send out. and I've scheduled it 7 days before closing. You may be scheduling your closing closer to the anticipated closing date, further away. All of these things are changeable and customizable to your own processes. In my checklist, I've used merge fields to pull in the final walkthrough date, the closing time. I also, through this activity, want to verify that any outstanding documents are taken care of, that I've addressed the key transfer, and I've also put in the merge field for notes. And so what this would do is it would allow me to input any notes, which would then in turn store on the radar page. And so how I do that is by adding this. When I save and close this, that note is then transferred here to the radar tab and stored. Here it is, storing notes. It gave the time, the date, and then who did this. Over here, I have my 3 actions. The one to send to a title or a closing attorney requesting the closing, the one to confirm with the other agent, and the one to confirm with my client. Now, the difference is, and the reason these did not show up at the same time is because inside the action item, I have said this is titled send email to the closing, or send email to schedule closing. It is a manual with preview email with this template attached to it. I am CCing the buyer attorney, the other agent, and the title company. In other words, everybody that I would want to coordinate to schedule a closing with. And down here under action for incomplete checklist, I have this selected. So what I've told the system is that I want to see this activity as an incomplete, meaning that if I do not have my checklist completed, show me this activity. Furthermore, if I send this email, make this activity go away and come back in 2 days. I could change this to 0 days, in which case this activity would never really go away. It would just sit there as a to-do until I heard back from the title or closing attorney and was able to schedule the closing. Whereas these other 2, I actually don't want to see these until I know I've completed all of these, because I can't confirm with them when the final walkthrough and the closing is until I've checked off these items. So these actions under here are not selected to be incomplete checklist items. They're actually complete checklist items.
That is a very powerful
In this scenario,
feature. That's a very powerful feature for Realvolve. And, just being able to say, okay, if something is not complete, if I don't have something on my checklist complete, I need to send an email, send a text message or whatever. And you can have multiples of those. So you can choose what you might want to do based off of what's on the checklist, and then have it send out. Now, what could happen is you send it out and you don't receive a response. You send it again and don't receive a response. You might have another option saying, hey, I really need this, put a little bit more emphasis on the request and saying, I've not heard back from you. And now you will probably get the response that you want. So, you can change your tone based off of how many runs. It'll tell you how many runs there are, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And today's giveaway, we're going to give away our canceled transaction workflow. Our canceled transaction workflow is essentially what it sounds like. Sometimes things fall through. So if I have something under contract and it goes awry and I'm either putting a listing back on the market or a buyer back on the search, what are those things that I need to do? And in this case, the canceled transaction workflow will stop any workflows from currently running. It'll verify that the mutual release paperwork is signed and uploaded. You may call that a different thing in a different area, but typically there's some kind of paperwork going on to verify that this thing's released. We're going to remarket a listing if you had that listing. We're going to reestablish the buyer on a search if your buyer is your client. And then we're going to notify any accepted backup offers. And this is all part of a transaction workflow that we're going to give you today. So with the idea of the canceled transaction workflow, I thought it was important that we go over the idea of alternative workflows. I know I am throwing a ton of information at you. And 1, this is recorded. 2, My email is kendra@realvolve.com if you have questions. And 3, you're not alone. I mean, we have an entire team here that's meant to empower you. So if what I'm saying is really meant to empower those users that are using it, but not at the level that would really be a game changer in their business. So what I want to talk about is when you take that workflow today for your canceled transaction, something you're probably going to want to implement it as an alternative workflow, meaning that if I go to stop, buy, or sell or contract to close, I can tell the system that the next logical step for me is to start cancel transaction workflow. So let's take a look at a couple-minute video and see exactly what that does and how I
use
do that.
alternative workflows. I'm going to find a current activity in the workflow that I need to stop, and I'm going to hover over it. So in this case, the scenario is I have ran buyer contract to close, but this property has fell through and I no longer am under contract. And so I need to stop buyer contract to close. And it's logical that my next step is to start canceled transaction workflow. And so to automate that a little bit, I've implemented an alternative workflow, meaning I've told the system that if I'm to stop buyer contract to close, that the next step is canceled transaction. And so how I activate that is I'm going to hover over any activity in a given workflow, and I'm going to select the X. I'm given the option to delete just this one activity, delete all, meaning it's going to delete anything that is yet to be done and also any record of stuff that I've completed. And then most likely I'm going to click delete all remaining, which is going to keep a record of anything I've completed, but get rid of those things that are no longer applicable because this transaction has fell through. And so once I click delete all remaining, it's going to activate the alternative workflow and pop up a box that says, because you canceled contract to close, do you want to start cancel transaction? And in this case, I do. And so I'm going to hit next, and it's going to go through the sequential steps of starting that next workflow. So how do I set that up? Inside of my workflows, I'm under buyer contract to close. And one of the options is alternative workflow. I can click here and select from a list of my workflows, but in this case, contract to close, more than likely when you cancel out a transaction or something falls through, the next logical step is to run cancel transaction and make sure any of those things that need to happen anytime you have something fall through get done. Once I've selected alternative workflow and I've hit update, anytime I cancel out a transaction, anytime I cancel out a buyer contract to close, that box will pop up and ask me, do you want to start cancel transaction?
And you can choose not to if you don't want to for whatever reason, or if you want to choose something else because maybe it was condo contract type thing and it was different in some way, but using the same workflow, and you might want to do different processes, so you might have a different one. But that just gives you a lot of power to be able to say, at least prevent anything from falling through the cracks at the time that workflow actually stops.
Yeah, exactly. So again, a lot of information today, but basically the takeaways are, do you have a good process in place to input important dates and times, and also do it in a way that it's saving time and decreasing opportunity for error? Are you sending a client's opening email that is auto-populating in seconds and it's pulling in important information in your contract for you? And have you really thought through the things that you have to do on every single transaction? And then, taking that a little bit further and thinking about the things you would love to be doing. So coming up in the next weeks, we have kind of, additional things that are really going to help you take where your knowledge of at Realvolve is right now and really accelerate that, including the use of merge fields, which I think you saw today, how powerful those can be, understanding and managing your suite of workflows. And I talked a little bit about that earlier, and the fact that, having that understanding of your flow of processes is a process in itself, thinking about the entire overview, and then also webhooks and how we can kind of empower that information or, use information again the other way. How can we take what's already in Realvolve and use it other places? And then also we want to give you value every week and take things, actionable items that you can take out today and start using. again, I'm in our premium services department, and I really want to emphasize that, we have different products and services for maybe every step of the way. Okay. So we have what's called our Navigator program. We have bi-weekly for 6 months, weekly for every 3 months. We also have a self-paced program where you can kind of go at your own pace. And we even have workflow audit services. So if you're someone that already has a suite of workflows in place and you want to, maybe you don't fit in, I don't need 6 months or something like that, email me or email sales, and we can kind of see what it is that you specifically need to get you the help that you need for where you are right now. We have help and support in Realvolve. At the bottom here, you have this help button. If you click on this, this is kind of our Google feature where you can just search. It will show you a database of resources, articles, blogs, things like that have been written to kind of help you out. We have a chat. So if you have questions, you can put that chat into this help. If you see something that's not quite working right in your system, you can click submit a support ticket to get us notified of that so we can help you. And we also have a walkthrough feature where if you're trying to do something specific, let's say set up a signature, the system can actually take you step by step and walk you through how to do that. So again, we're going to download a copy of that cancel transaction workflow into your system today if you want it. So if you would like that workflow, go ahead and put your email inside of the chat and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. And then I know that was long-winded. Normally we have more time for Q&A, but if you can't tell, transaction to close is just so important and something I enjoy talking about. So I'm definitely here for any questions you guys have or maybe something we didn't cover.
Absolutely. One of the questions from Craig was, where do we find the prior office hours? I gave a link in the chat area there for the YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos, but there is a playlist specifically for office hours. So whenever we do the recordings, we download them, we upload them to the YouTube channel itself, and then we'll also put it in the playlist. So any of these, you can go back. They've got dates on them, so you can reference them very easily.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, everybody, for putting your email addresses in there. I'll get that to the right team. Nothing else.
Okay. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we look forward to kind of future topics and getting you guys some more information to help you in your businesses.
Hey, we got one more question from James. Using this for transaction management, what is an easy way to allow agents to submit a new contract?
Sure. One of the things that I've been doing with my clients is having contracts submitted through forms, meaning that we're using the power of Zapier. We're setting up a form that says, attach the document or the contract to this form, or go check Zip Forms or SkySlope or wherever your document management is. And it gives the basics of the information. And essentially that form submission is going through Zapier, throwing itself into Realvolve for that contact and creating a task for the transaction manager to start a workflow. Very, very, that's advanced, but it's possible. And again, reach out if you have questions.
Yeah, we have an API that would allow that. It's just would take some additional setup as well. Any other questions? Do you have a video on SkySlope integration? I'm not aware of one. Kendra, have you?
So my brokerage actually uses SkySlope, and typically what we're doing is we are using inside of Realvolve, every transaction has its own email address. SkySlope has the same feature. So we're actually using those transaction-specific emails to throw information around, saying, let's get a copy of the document sent from Realvolve over to SkySlope or back and forth or whatever. We do have a direct integration with Dotloop, but if that is SkySlope, I would say lean into the transaction specific emails and how you can use those.
I have been looking into an integration with SkySlope, so that may be something down the road. That would be
ZipForms is
available.
the same way. They have the same thing, a transaction specific email in the meantime.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are just a minute overdue, and we appreciate you guys attending. If you have other topics that you want us to cover, definitely reach out to us, Mark at realvolve.com or Kendra at realvolve.com, or just go out to our Facebook community and say, hey, how do I do this? Or can we have an office hours on this topic? We love to make sure that we meet your needs and making sure that we're covering the things that we need to cover. So appreciate you all, and we will go from there. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.